Now available in paperback and Kindle, All About Marilyn. Learn all about the struggles of a faded former teen sitcom star in this absolutely fabulous 5-star screenplay. Get All About Marilyn in paperback and Kindle on Amazon.com today. A former Playboy model has filed a civil lawsuit against Bill Cosby. Now, according to 80-year-old Victoria Valentino, she alleges that she was coping with the death of her son in 1969 and got into a conversation with Mr. Cosby over the tragic loss of her son. And that's when she says that Mr. Cosby allegedly took her and a friend to a Finnish massage and picked them up for dinner, and then went and put a alleged pill in the glass of this woman, and this is what she says she alleged led to the assault. Now, when I listen to the details of Victoria Valentino's story, I have to believe that they are quite suspect, because when I listen to her details and take them in the context of American history, this whole incident could have not possibly happened, because America at the time was currently in the state of Jim Crow in America. Because while we did get the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 passed, we still had Jim Crow still going on in the South, and we also had a lot of rampant racism in the North and the West. So when I listen to Victoria Valentino's story, it does not really fit within the context of history, and it doesn't fit within the context of history because no black man in 1969 would have been able to get away with this crime in 1969, with Jim Crow still going on in the South, discrimination still going on in the North, and Los Angeles Police Department being a hotbed of racism in the West. It's just not possible as related to the context of history, and that's where I see a discrepancy with Victoria Valentino's alleged story. Because, again, if Bill Cosby were to have participated in this sex crime in 1969, it would have been front page news back then, because a white woman being violated and assaulted by a black man would have made all of the papers at the time. And it would have made all the papers at the time because in Jim Crow America and racist parts of America like the West and the North, they would have gone out here and made Bill Cosby front page news, and they would have made him front page news in order to try to make a commentary on how black men are sexual predators. So no newsman in 1969 would have passed up on this story if it were out here at all. Moreover, no white police officer would have turned away a Playboy model like Victoria Valentino. No, they would have trusted and believed this white woman as related to her story in 1969, and she would have easily been able to go out here and file that police report against Bill Cosby. So when I listen to her words, they really, again, don't fit within the context of history, because a white woman in 1969 would be able to easily be able to file any sex charges against a black man and get that black man arrested. So when I listen to that story, again, does not fit within the context of history, because again, in 1969, Jim Crow was still going on. Black men were still getting lynched in some parts of the South, and this was going on way into the 70s. So you're going to try to tell me that a white woman on the West Coast is not going to be able to go out here and file that police report when those LAPD officers would eagerly go out here and look to get that report filed so they can go out here and get that arrest on Bill Cosby, and the mainstream media would not go out here and report on that story the same way they did with O.J. Simpson about 30 years later. Again, when you look at the context of this story in the context of history, the details just don't add up. And with the details not adding up, I'm listening to this story, and it really, again, just sounds real suspect. And it also sounds suspect when I think about the technicalities utilized to go out here and get this lawsuit against Mr. Cosby. Now, the technicality that the state of California is looking to use is a look-back window, a technicality that I believe is quite constitutionally suspect because this technicality of a look-back window says that alleged victims can sue their perpetrators as related to alleged sex crimes in civil court as related to a certain period of time, like a couple of years. And again, that's quite suspect to me because there was never any sort of look back window for any other civil crime. And again, this is a red flag to me as related to this look back window because according to our Constitution, you really cannot go out here and file charges against people once the statutes of limitations run out because according to our Constitution, people are innocent until proven guilty, and if a person believes a person did perpetrate something on them, you would think they would want to go out here and file charges so that that person could have their right to a speedy trial. They would not wait past close to about 60 plus years to file a lawsuit against someone because if someone is looking to go out here and file a lawsuit against someone 60 plus years later, then it really shows that that person's whole motive for that lawsuit is quite suspect. And that's what I believe is happening here with the latest alleged victim of Bill Cosby. I believe that this whole case against Bill Cosby is quite suspect. And I believe that it's quite suspect because they are looking to use technicalities to try to get a so-called victory against Bill Cosby because they could not go out here and get a win in court as related to the 2018 sexual assault charges that were already proven to be unsubstantiated, but that overzealous prosecutor, Kevin Steele, wanted to go out here and try to clout chase and make his name on Mr. Cosby's name by filing those charges, and that's what I believe is happening here with this whole technical law as related to this civil suit, which basically has no merit. Because, again, if this woman were a victim of a sex crime, that woman would have, again, if she were white, be able to easily go into a Los Angeles police station, file a police report, and be able to file a criminal charge against Mr. Cosby in 1969 because Bill Cosby was not a star in 1969. Yes, he was on television possibly at the time, but he was not somebody who had such great influence like Les Moonves, and he wasn't somebody like a Roman Polanski who could go out here and easily go out here and evade justice. No, Bill Cosby was just a black guy on television, and there were not many black guys on television back in 1969. So again, looking at the context of history as related to what these allegations against Mr. Cosby, I have to find them to be quite suspect because again, Bill Cosby in 1969 could not go out here and be able to bury anything as related to Victoria Valentino, a so-called Playboy model. Again, Playboy models were basically a dime a dozen back then, and she's making these allegations similar to many other women who go out here and make these stories. But if this were the case again, this is 1969, you would be able to go out here and be able to easily get this black man locked up. And again, the mainstream media would be basically running to report that story because we've already, in 1969, we've already come past the Jim Crow. We've already got things going on as related to Jim Crow still in some parts of the country. We've got Dr. King's assassination. We've got Malcolm X. I think he was assassinated too. So this would have been a huge story. And again, this white woman would have had the full backing of the LA prosecutor's office at the time. So I'm listening to this woman's story and I just see it as complete nonsense. And again, I'm listening to her looking to try to play to people's emotions, trying to say that she was dealing with the tragic loss of her son, trying to make a story that which she tries to heap on extra weight on it, trying to make herself out to be a victim by trying to say, oh, she was dealing with the loss of her son in order to trigger people's emotions, similar to the way white women tried to trigger white beta males' emotions back in the days of the Jim Crow South by making allegations against black men and then looking to rile those men up and have them go out here and attack a black man in a lynching. And this is basically what is being done with Bill Cosby right now. This is another lynching. However, this lynching is being done in a strategic fashion, and it's being done in a strategic fashion because what's been happening these days is that we've got so many white males being the face of sexual predation that what they want to do is go out here and change the narrative to make it all about black men. Because when it comes down to white supremacy, they always want to believe that the black man is the image of sexual predation, and this is the narrative they want to push because what they want to do is project that narrative onto black men, and they want to project that narrative onto black men to keep people from seeing all the sexually predatory behavior of white men and the sexually deviant behavior of white men. And what we're seeing here with what's happening to Bill Cosby is that there was a case of Danny Masterson being convicted as related to the sex crime he participated in, and with that media coverage on Danny Masterson's conviction, what they want to do is deflect from Danny Masterson and the crime that he was convicted of violating 2 women. And what they want to do is go out here and be able to find a black man to go out here and make a distraction so that people will not look at guys like Danny Masterson and see him as a sexual predator. So that's what the mainstream media is trying to do with this case as related to Bill Cosby. What they want to do is try to continue trying to push the narrative that Bill Cosby is a violent black brute, and they want to push the idea that America's dad, as he was originally called, is a black brute in an effort to go out here and demonize Bill Cosby. And as they look to demonize Bill Cosby and make him the bad guy, we don't look at all of the sexually predatory behavior of white men that has been dug up ever since the days of the Me Too movement, when things went south, when Roger Ailes gave Gretchen Carlson that $20 million cash settlement and triggered the hypergamy in most of the white women, because the original plans for the Me Too movement were to make it a campaign to wage on black men in the entertainment industry, to make allegations against those black men and try to get people to trust and believe these whole allegations, to derail these black men's careers and take away their wealth. Unfortunately, again, as Roger Ailes went out here and tried to get himself out from under his side piece, Gretchen Carlson, he wound up triggering the hypergamy in those white women. And those white women, they saw that they could get $20 million. And since then, many of these white males have had all of the cover blown off them. And as they've had the cover blown off them as related to these allegations of sexual harassment, sexual assault, and sexual violence, the face of sexual violence and sexual predation is not the black man that the mainstream media wants to present. No, it is turning into these white males, and these white males are turning more and more into the face of sexual predation. And this is something that many are trying to, again, deflect from. But when we look at things, these are the men who actually have the power to go out here and participate in this kind of violence. And they have the power to go out here and be able to suppress these stories, because they are the ones who control the media. They are the ones who control the narrative. And I find it interesting that you don't see many of these white females like Victoria Valentino going out here and filing lawsuits against men like a Roman Polanski. In fact, I find it disturbing that Roman Polanski is presented with his victim in a story as reconciled. I mean, I find it disturbing that you have a white male who's gone out here and participated in deviant sexual acts with a child, and they tried to normalize those deviant sexual acts that this man perpetrated on a child back in the 60s and 70s and left the country. I find it interesting that when the white man does these deviant acts, they go out here and look to normalize it. And I find it even more interesting that many of these older white females who have make allegations as related to Mr. Cosby, none of these women are going out here filing lawsuits against these prominent white male executives like Les Moonves, who has a history of, again, alleged sexual violence, or looking to go out here and file civil lawsuits against Woody Allen, a man who, again, basically, according to some allegations, abused his own children. And I find it interesting, nobody is filing lawsuits against Stephen Collins, who openly, again, admitted to participating in a deviant sex act with a child. Again, I find it interesting, though, that these cases are not the ones presented as related to this whole look-back window. I mean, why aren't the white women going out here and filing look-back window lawsuits against Roman Polanski, Stephen Collins, Woody Allen, and guys like Les Moonves? I mean, if you've got this whole civil suit and the technicality to use it, why aren't the white women going out here and looking to go out here and get civil and punitive damages against those white men? Critical question I have to ask Victoria Valentino and many of these other white women who were a part of the Me Too movement. Why aren't you going after those white men? Why is it that they always constantly keep coming after Bill Cosby? I mean, this is something that makes it look quite suspect to me. I mean, constantly, every time a white man winds up getting arrested, or getting convicted, or forced to resign a position, they always go to two black men, Bill Cosby and R. Kelly. I just find it interesting that every time one of these white guys like Danny Masterson winds up with a conviction, or one of these city councilmen or one of these local politicians winds up with one of these charges, one of these white men, or non-black men in some cases, wind up with these charges, there's always talk about Bill Cosby, and people are seeing through this deflection, and we easily see through this deflection as related to white male violence, because it's looking like you're trying to demonize a black man in order to avoid dealing with the issue that white males are the ones who are the actual face of sexual predation, similar to what's going on these days with the mainstream media and mass shooters, because the mainstream media with mass shooters these days is doing the exact same thing that they did with Bill Cosby, trying to take the shootouts that Pookie and Ray Ray are involved in and turn them into mass shootings, all to try to take the heat off the large number of white males who are seen as the face of mass shooting, and they don't want the white male to be connected as related to being the face of violence. And because they don't want the white male to be seen as the face of violence, what they do is try to conflate it by trying to say, oh, this black man is the face of violence. But in actuality, when you look at Bill Cosby's whole case, again, he was exonerated of all charges, and these civil suits are quite suspect because you're looking at trying to get a conviction on the preponderance of evidence and looking to get a conviction not based on reasonable doubt, just like they did with O.J. Simpson, when these white individuals can't go out here and win in criminal court. They try to win in civil court and try to get an empty symbolic victory against a black man. That's what's looking like happening here with Bill Cosby. And again, when I look at this whole case, again, it just seems suspect every time a black man goes out here and is just trying to live his life, and one of these white guys is caught up in a crime. What happens is once the white guy gets caught up in that crime, they look for a black man to go out here and deflect on, to try to make it look like the white male is not the predator he actually is. And never are these white females ever making an effort to hold these white males accountable. I mean, I find it interesting after all of those Me Too allegations against all of these white men, we don't see any of these white females filing civil lawsuits, even though they were looking for a payday and they've got this look back window. You don't see any of these white females announcing they want to go after Woody Allen, Stephen Collins, um, Roman Polanski. I mean, you don't see any of these individuals doing this, but they'll sit up there and put a picture of Roman Polanski up with his victim, trying to make it look like it's okay. And again, just shows you how just depraved these guys in Hollywood are. They will give a pass to white male sexual predation and try to demonize it by projecting that deviancy onto black men like Bill Cosby, and it just shows how twisted they are in not wanting to deal with the depravity of white males in Hollywood. These white males can continue to go on after the so-called Me Too movement was supposed to stop sexual harassment and sexual violence and sex crimes. These white males continue to get a pass from the system, the mainstream media, and it seems like they just, every time one of these white guys winds up getting caught doing something, they go out here and try to go get Bill Cosby or R. Kelly and make them into the whipping boy to try to go out here and deflect attention from their crimes. Again, when I listen to this whole case as related to the latest civil lawsuit against Bill Cosby, this is, again, a concerted effort to deflect from white male violence, and it's also something designed to also take away from the wealth of Mr. Cosby, because the ultimate goal is to try to whittle down Mr. Cosby's wealth as he's fighting all of these civil lawsuits so that he will not leave an inheritance for his children. All of this is being done to go after Mr. Cosby's wealth because they do not want the idea of a black person having wealth to pass down to the next generation, or a legacy to pass down that is positive. What Hollywood is wanting to do is trying to tarnish the legacy of Bill Cosby with these continuing onslaughts, and I believe it's time for Mr. Cosby to start pushing back, because what's happening here is, again, a deliberate effort to try to demonize him as related to these allegations. And these allegations, if as I look at them, they just don't hold up, because if you understand the context of history, this event could not have possibly happened, because again, a white woman in the days of Jim Crow would have easily been able to take a TV actor like Bill Cosby and have him on trial. And again, in the 1960s, this would have been the trial of the century at the time, and it would have been a major event because, again, Bill Cosby was not that heavily connected in Hollywood. No, he was not on the level of a Les Moonves, and he wasn't on the level of many Hollywood executives. He was just a comedian in 1969 who was on I Spy, I believe, and again, he wasn't a major player as related to getting projects greenlit or getting money allocated. So there's no way he could have possibly been able to get away with this if this were allegedly happened. And again, when I look at this whole incident and this lawsuit, it just really smells real bad, because if you have to use a technicality to go after somebody who's black, it just shows how racist this is. Even though this woman wants to say, oh, it's not racial, it's looking racial to me because you went after this black man, and the only person filing this lawsuit is against a black man. I don't see no white females going after any of these white boys. I mean, you've got this law on the books, and you would think those hypergamous white women would go out here and go after those white boys, but those white women are getting on code because they know in the aftermath of the Me Too movement, white men were getting ready to cut them off. And with those white men getting ready to cut them off, many of those white women knew that they had already bit the hand that they fed them, and they knew that they had gone too far when they went after the Senator Al Franken and tried to grab political power. And that's when many of the white feminists of the 60s started backing up, because they realized who was the one paying for them and providing for them. And then that's why they wanted to go out here and back up as related to the Me Too movement. And again, when I look at this case again, this is them trying to again deflect from many of the white males who are out of control. But the whole thing is that this is the latest attack on Bill Cosby, and I just find it interesting every time one of these white guys goes out here and gets himself jammed up. They always go to Bill Cosby to take the heat off these white guys, and go always trying to say something about Bill Cosby and trying to make him the face of sexual predation. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to many women becoming women in crisis, like this, you can pick up my book, The Woman Crisis, on Amazon.com, and I put a whole chapter in there about the Me Too movement and how it's related to the woman crisis here in America. And if you want to go out here and pick up some of my other books on the SJS Direct Imprint, you can find all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and Walmart, and Target. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.